host of Vinyl City Broadcasting, your transit express to rock and roll trivia. As you can hear, we're having a gale force wind in the city today. So let's go downtown, out of the wind, to our VCB studio, and I'll tell you about our special guest today.
Ringo, I'll be in shortly.
Our special guest today is Johnny Gale. I was first introduced to this man's talent when I walked into Rico's man cave the other day. He was listening to someone playing the guitar that caught my attention. I said to Rico, "Are you listening to Jimi Hendrix?" He said, "No." That's the special guest that you'll be interviewing today, Mr. Johnny Gale. Need I say more? He is known to many as Gale Force, which is the title of one of his CDs. Johnny is from Flushing, Queens, New York. His credentials include producer, arranger, vocalist, guitarist extraordinaire, and is a renowned expert in the authentic styles of classic soul, doo-wop, R&B, blues, and rock. Gale Force seems to be sending me over to our Zoom room, Rico. Hello, Johnny.
Hi, Marie.
You know, we've been hoping to get this interview with you, and we think that Gale Force has finally blown you our way. Your bio is quite impressive and extensive, and we're not quite sure where to begin, so let's go back to the beginning, to Queens, New York, where you grew up. Is this where you discovered rock and roll on the dial?
I did. I discovered it on the dial, and I discovered it on TV with Dick Clark and American Bandstand.
Oh, yeah.
And then a little later, all the other shows that had the hits of the day featured, which there were many, Clay Cole, and even sadly Jerry Blavat passed last week, so I watched Jerry on his program, The Discophonic Scene. I had all his albums, I still have them. And I heard I was exposed to a lot of regional records that we didn't hear here. We heard like Jimmy Charles or Johnny Tillotson, the records that were popular in those days. But
Yes.
Jerry had some groups on there that were just songs that we wouldn't be exposed to. So I had a long-standing relationship with Jerry, and we played the Kimmel Center. I played it 21 times, and known Jerry from the days of Little Isadore. So I guess we can get into that at some point.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, but yeah, I started. My mother always had the radio on in the kitchen. We had a Philco portable radio in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And she listened to WNEW AM, William B. Williams, and Martin Block, the Milkman's Matinee, that was on later. And my father listened to WQXR, which was classical music.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to WINS 1010 Winds, Murray Decay. I'm a little young. I had some friends that were into Alan Freed, but I wasn't that aware of him at the time. But Murray Decay for sure. And then a little later on, WABC, which went on the air in '61, and WMGM, Peter Tripp, and down all the way at the end of the dial, WWRL, which was the black station, And so we heard some different, songs on that station that we heard on, I guess, the commercial radio, but there was no FM in those days. And I was an avid listener. I started as a fan, as most of us do.
Yes.
I was, Ed Sullivan, so I saw the Kirby Stone Four. I saw Elvis. I saw Johnny Austin. Whoever had a hit, every Sunday night we would tune in and we'd see it was a great variety show. And so, of course, I always waited to see the people that were making the hit records. I loved, I'm going to have a senior moment, Johnny Horton. He did the Battle of New Orleans on Ed Sullivan and Sing to Bismarck. But Dick Clark had all those people too. So Johnny and Joe, Billy and Lily, whoever was popular, I was tuned in and knew all that stuff and had all the records. There was a woman that lived next door to us in the garden apartments that we lived in. She was literally, her door was 4 feet away from ours. And she was a generation older than my parents. She belonged to the Columbia Record Club.
Oh.
So she would play records to me, Guy Mitchell. So I had exposure to not only rock and roll, but the popular music of the time, the late 50s and early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And we moved from Flushing to Bayside in 1962 when I was 10. So and there were it was a different atmosphere. There were a lot of great records then too, but it was something magical about my early childhood. Domenico Modugno, and records from 1958. There were a lot of novelty records that year that would be appealing to children, like the Chipmunks or the Witch Doctor started with David Seville, and then the Chipmunks, and it was the Jamies. I have a lot of vivid memories of that era, So, and later on, I first started playing the clarinet, which a lot of kids started on, and I could read music. And my uncle was in the New York Philharmonic as the first violist, and before that was with Toscanini in the NBC Orchestra. But I knew about it a little before my time. He started with the New York Philharmonic in '56, and he retired in '76. My father's older brother. So I'm doing all the talking, Marie.
Oh, okay. Well, it was definitely a fun time to grow up in the music, and then it was good you had exposure to a few other types of music, the popular music at that time,
Yeah,
and big band and things like that. So, and then of course the New York Philharmonic. So you had a well-rounded experience with music as a young person. And
well, my parents are musicians, so
okay.
they were both, and really, they didn't really what we call have a rock feel. They didn't have. I visited the other night, revisited Rock, Rock, Rock. The Alan Freed movie with Teddy Randazzo and Tuesday Weld with a younger friend, a protege of mine. And it's a hysterical movie because it's a really low budget movie, but they have some great acts on it, like the Moon Glows, the
Oh.
Flamingos, Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, and of course they have some pop acts like Teddy Randazzo and the Three Chuckles, who were fantastic. No rock feels, but they were great. They were reminiscent of the Four Aces or the Gaylords or the Hilltoppers. They had on Sereno and the Bow Ties, was the same. But it was interesting because Tuesday Weld was 13 years old. So
Tuesday Weld, huh?
it was like a junior high school movie. The plot was very simple, but it was fun to revisit it.
Oh, yeah. We have a few of those videos, and so after this, you're reminding me to look through and see if we have that one. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's that's great. So you had mentioned Little Isadore, of course, and
yeah.
having a connection to him. And recently, we saw a YouTube video that was recorded on March 17th, 1995. It was a UGHA show. So
Yeah.
we saw that Little Isadore is quite a performer with a lot of personality, and you were on that show. So tell us a little bit about Little Isadore.
Well, I met him. We had same manager, and I was working with another fellow as a songwriter. And Little Isadore, aka David Foreman, heard a song that I wrote with this other fellow, and he wanted to get together with me. So we got together and we wrote a few songs. And then he had his own act, and we played a place called the Bottom Line. And we included a couple of the songs that we wrote in his show. And he turned to me with a sparkle in his eyes, and he said, we have to do this." So we put together Little Isadore and the Inquisitors,
Okay.
and I remember I had a cassette tape of a couple of songs that we did. "I Pray for You" and "Go" that I produced in the studio, and so I took them to Ronnie Italiano, who was
Yes.
the founder of UGHA, United and Group Harmony Association, and went to Clifton Music, and his girlfriend at the time, Christine Vitale, who was a young woman at the time, played the tape. He didn't really know what to make of Little Isadore because he was in full costume. They knew me because I had been working with them for quite a few years as a staff musician. But anyway, she said to him, "This stuff is really great. These guys are really good. Let's have them at our show."
Okay.
So, so we played, and it was we played a UGHA show, and his fan base embraced Little Isadore and the group like it was the most exciting thing they had seen because it was there was an element of camp, but there was
Yeah.
certainly a respect for the music,
Yes.
and we had a lot of personnel changes over the years, but we had a ball every time we played there, and so did the audience, you know.
Yeah.
So it was, and all those documented, those videos exist. They're from, I guess, the mid '90s.
Oh.
Hard to believe it's like 28 years ago, but it is. And
Yeah. We could see everyone was having a fun time, you included. We saw you coming out at the end on the stage and playing. And a lot of energy.
well, I think that the video you're talking about, we did it in Philadelphia. I think that was in Philly, and we played at Pork up in Pittsburgh, and we became very popular there as well because we were very respectful of the music. It wasn't like a parody of the music. The
No.
music was authentic,
Yes.
but we had a lot of humor in the act.
Yeah.
So
It
it
was
had,
great. Yeah,
it had
it
some
was.
legs, you know.
It was.
And Kenny Vance um, I had met Kenny many years ago. I used to be with Randy and the Rainbows, and in the early '70s, we would play we would play clubs or school engagements with Jane the Americans or Tommy James and the Shondells and the Belmonts, and so I met Kenny back then. I was friendlier with the guitar player Marty Coopersmith,
Hmm.
goes by Sanders. He was very friendly with me because I guess I was a interesting guitar player. But then years later, um, Kenny saw me with Little Isadore, and we got friendly. I went to his house in 1992, and we got together, and then the next day his manager called me, who was my manager in 1975. So you know, he was in. We're all Queens guys.
Yes.
Kenny lived in the southwestern part of Queens, and I lived in northeastern Queens.
Oh,
And
okay.
I said it was inevitable that we would get together because we're two guys that really never had straight jobs. We
Mhm.
always did music. We never had a straight job, and so whatever that's, I mean, it's a dubious distinction, but at any at any
Well, as
rate,
long as it works, that's the main thing.
it was up until kind of recently. But I still, you know, we're as you know, we're going to play the uh, um, gig that we have in Clear Lake, Iowa,
Oh,
and
yes, yes.
and, uh, and then we're headlining Westbury Music Fair the following Saturday. So we
Okay.
still play, you know, not too much, but a few times a year we go out. And last gig we played was at Count Basie Performing Arts Center in Red Bank, New Jersey.
Oh,
And we, I rehearsed the group the night before, made us, we had the set written, and as painful as it was, I made us run it top to bottom. So, and when we did the show, everyone was delighted because it went, you know, it ran as if we had been working all along.
oh.
Um, it was kind of a throwback to what it used to be
Mhm.
prior to COVID and prior
Right.
to Kenny being sick. And so we were all very happy, but he was thrilled. So
Oh,
we're doing
yeah.
these gigs and hopefully they go well too. But Kenny and I are very close and
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
we have,
you work
we
so
have,
well together. So yeah, you can see
we
it.
have the kind of relationship where we don't even need to talk. We can read each other's minds, you know, so.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Now, do you have any input on Kenny's new documentary, Heart and Soul? You heard anything about that?
Well, I'm listed as a period music consultant.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, that footage has been around for a long time. Kenny just reconfigured it, added a couple of newer interviews with already
Oh,
ripped, and and turned it into this thing. I saw it. Um, they screened it at the Regal Theater in town on the big screen. It was
oh,
awesome. It was
okay.
awesome. And Kenny's very charismatic, and the music is fantastic. Sadly, a lot of the people that are in it are not around anymore because the footage is from 25 or 30 years ago.
Oh, I
But
see.
it's an excellent film, and uh, and we're hoping that Kenny, you know, the thing has some legs and
Yes,
can get seen, and we can watch it on Netflix. You know,
that would be great. We'd love to
yeah,
see it.
yeah.
Looking forward to that. Now, tell us about Bronx Tale, The Irishman, and Boardwalk Empire. Any cool stories that you can share with us?
I can. So I work with a producer named Stuart Lerman, who is a Grammy award-winning producer, and he had called me to sing on a movie he was producing the music for called Revolutionary Road. And I couldn't do it at the time. I was too busy with other projects. So I told him to give Little Isadore a call. So he ended up filling that role. But then a few years later, he called me to do Boardwalk Empire.
Yes.
The last season it was a great show. And I did background vocals. I would stack my vocals and I really studied it. I played guitar on one of the things, the Tiger
Mhm.
Rag, and I produced David Johansen on a couple where he sang lead. David Johansen of the New York Dolls fame and Buster Poindexter. And so and then that led to me doing the pilot for a HBO show called Vinyl. And and that got picked up. One season, it was very busy at a time when Kenny was ill. So
Oh,
it was like fate, because Kenny was ill and we stopped working. As you probably know, Kenny lost his house in Hurricane.
yes, yes, we heard about that in the
Right. So
hurricane. Yes.
a year before, we were flying over his neighborhood after Hurricane Irene had hit, and the neighborhood was ransacked. And I was thinking, I'm sitting next to Kenny on the plane, I was thinking, oh my God, his house isn't going to be here. But not a drop of, his house was perfect. But the year later, when Sandy hit, it wasn't the same
I know.
story,
It
unfortunately.
was a
So,
tremendous hurricane. It was so sad to hear what happened to Kenny's house and with that hurricane. It's a lot of damage done. Sorry to hear that.
when I was there in 1992, it was pretty barren. And by 2013, um, it was every inch of that house was tweaked. I mean, it was beautiful. And the house had been built in 1916 and had withstood many, many hurricanes.
Oh, wow. 1916. That's amazing.
16, yeah. And we had a lot of, I set his basement up as a rehearsal space, and it was very productive. We had great rehearsals there. We would, I originally went in with this other group, and I reconfigured the room, and I made it so we could be very productive. And we would, I was with Kenny almost every night. Um, People on stage, we looked pretty cavalier and nonchalant, but behind the scenes, we worked very hard to get to the point where we could coast.
Mhm.
So, but before I got off on this tangent, I don't remember where we were. So,
No, we appreciate you sharing this information with us.
yeah. Well, at any rate, when Kenny was ill, I was nervous about, well, we used to do 100 jobs a year, and I produced Kenny's records for him, so that added more work for me. And I did some side projects, but it was mostly Kenny in all those years. So this producer, Stuart Lerner, who I mentioned, got me involved with Boardwalk Empire, Vinyl, was Martin Scorsese, Terrence went, um, and then from my involvement with Vinyl, one of the music supervisors, Megan Courier, Randall Poster and Megan Courier, big film music supervisors. She wanted me to be in The Irishman, playing guitar with Jerry Vale, because we had just cut 7 Jerry Vale songs. We were able to get his vocals discreetly on some of the stuff from the 60s. I picked a couple of them, and which they asked me to do. And we went in, and they wanted them with a smaller ensemble. So the band we had was string section from the New York Philharmonic, the best musicians in New York. Um, and so I played guitar on it, and because we did recently, they wanted me in the movie because some of the guitar parts were intricate jazz type chords, and they wanted, if it ended up making the cut, they wanted it to look they wanted it to look right, that it wasn't some actors faking it. So and I had just did it about 3 weeks before. So I went in for a week, and they went for costuming. They fitted me. I had 3 people on me. One to just wash my paint, one for my tie, one for makeup. It was
That's the music business. I mean, the movie business, music and movie business.
it was I had I had been invited to do some stuff before, but this was I couldn't resist because it was such an all-star cast, and I had met a couple of them at Harvey Keitel's wedding. It was at the Robert De Niro's loft right after 9/11. We played there courtesy of Richard Perry, the producer, who was a childhood friend of Kenny's. So all of them were there, all the wise guys, the movie wise guys. So and they knew us, and so I did the Irishman. I got a chance for 20 minutes to be alone with Al Pacino, and I told him that we had actually met at Harvey's wedding, and we chatted in the hallway. I happened to get along, and couldn't have been sweeter, and so that took years. I was hoping that my mother would still be around to see it. She knew that I did it and sent her pictures, but she really wanted to see it. And sadly, she passed before the movie was released. So I'll take a sip of water.
Sure.
I don't have a lot of I'm a soft-spoken guy, so to speak for a long time is a little challenging. But
Okay.
so anyway, we did the Irishman, and then the Bronx Tale at the same time. I worked with a producer named Jimmy Bralower. We co-produced an artist that I found, and he got 3 Grammy nominations for work that we created for him. And Jimmy was friends with Mark Rivera, who was Billy Joel for 35 years. So Tommy Mottola came to Billy Joel's gig at Madison Square Garden and wanted Billy to do the music for a Bronx Tale. And Billy, for whatever reason, passed on it. So Tommy went to Mark Rivera, and Mark recruited me because it was a period thing, and I'm kind of have a specialty that I am an authentic arranger for the music of the 50s and 60s. So, and it turned out that Tommy and Ches Palminteri knew me from Kenny Vance and the Planotones. So I had a couple of go-arounds, and then we would work and it would die, and it, usually what happens with a Broadway show. So one day I took my mother to CVS Pharmacy to pick up some things she needed. We're sitting in my car, my cell phone rings, it was Tommy, and he said, I got Alan Menken to write the score for the Bronx Tale, and I need you to make it authentic. And I asked him, are you sure? And Tommy said very succinctly, I'm positive. Because on Broadway, a lot of stuff is sanitized or whatever, watered down. It's not what we would consider authentic when they get into rock and roll, although maybe more these days than it used to be. So anyway, I got involved. I did all the rhythm section arrangements, and I even wrote the opening number. I didn't get credit for it, but I got a credit as period music consultant because they're very territorial about credits.
I see.
Unusual to bring an outsider into that world. Because
that world, okay.
Tommy Mottola was an outsider in that world. He said to me, he said, I'm learning the same way you are because Tommy was the chairman of Sony Records.
Right, yes, I heard that.
And Tommy started as manager, he managed Hall & Oates. And but because of the landscape changing in the record business, Tommy got involved in Broadway. So he bought a couple of properties, and this was a production, Tommy's production company, Dodgers Properties, and De Niro's production company, three production companies. So I was very busy with that, and went to all the rehearsals and took my son to opening night on Broadway. It was very exciting. And my name, my name on the in the playbill and
Yeah.
on the marquee. So it was an interesting time. Then Kenny came back with his son. We started to do some gigs, and then I had gotten involved with another fellow putting together a Motown tribute act.
Oh.
Make it very authentic. I did the A&R work for it. I picked the songs, and we were doing that and started to get that off the ground. And, and then the pandemic hit, and I remember I did a gig with Kenny in Fort Lauderdale. I had a guy behind me coughing nonstop, and I said, said to the not called stewardesses anymore. What are they called now?
Flight attendants.
Flight attendants.
Yeah.
So could you please get him a mask and me a mask?
Yeah.
A week later, I was with this Motown act, and we played in Fort Pierce a week later, and then in Charleston, South Carolina. And I got so sick, and they were testing for COVID then. I'm sure I had it.
Yeah.
I ended up in the hospital for 5 days. I was very sick. And then when I came out of the hospital, we did a gig with Kenny in Easton, Pennsylvania. And that was our last gig. And then we were locked down.
Yes.
And then we just started to do some things, but I have some gigs with Kenny, and I have some gigs with this Motown tribute act called that Motown Band, and you can see their videos on YouTube or they have a website.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of those videos.
Yeah,
That's the music I grew up with, was Motown.
Well, their latest video is a track that I cut from as a producer. Come and Get These Memories, which is one of my favorite songs from that era, what we call the classic Motown era, 1962 to 1970,
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm kind of running out of voice here, Marie.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just ask you two quick questions.
Yeah.
This probably can be very quick. What's your favorite guitar?
I never considered myself a collector, but I have accumulated a lot of guitars. And last night I took out a guitar, a Gibson ES-175D. I have two of them. And I played it on the couch, and it was a delight. And but I play Stratocaster, French Stratocasters for traveling because they travel well. The Fender Telecaster here, and I use them mostly for recording.
Yes.
But my history with guitars was that I would see guys that I admired on TV or in concert, and I would want to emulate them, so I would have to get the same guitar. So when I was a teenager, I had a friend who was also a fantastic drummer. His name was Steve Mongaluzzo, and we played together for years. And he was the guy responsible for dragging me out to every concert. So we saw Jimi Hendrix, we saw Eric Clapton, we saw Jeff Beck, who sadly just passed. We saw whoever was popular in that time frame from 1966 to 1970, 71. And because I have a vivid memory, I'm blessed that way that I can remember.
That is, yeah, you have a lot. You're just telling us. Good memory.
I saw all of them. Mitch Wright on the Detroit Wheels, Jim McCarty on guitar, who I idolized. the McCoys, Rick Derringer, who was Rick Derringer then, and like there was a show, Jimi Hendrix headline with Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company, the Chambers Brothers and the Soft Machine, the Young Rascals, the Vagrants, the Illusion, the Candymen, 10 years after the Vanilla Fudge, Ibn Hawkins Singers, Jeff Beck Group. They would have these shows at Flesh and Metal in Queens at the Singer Bowl. Then I saw Led Zeppelin at the New York State Pavilion with Kenny Burrell as an opening act, which at the Fillmore East we used to go to all the time. So we'd see Steppenwolf and Buddy Rich would be the opening act. It was interesting, you know, so I have a lot of memories of that. And I could talk for hours if I have a.
I see that. Well, your history, you have so much history, and you've had a wonderful career, all the things you've been involved in. Before we let you go, we wanted to show our appreciation for doing the interview with us. Rico designed a mock-up comp billboard cover specifically for you, Johnny. Just give me a moment, please, and I'll post it on the screen so that you and everyone else out in VCB land will be able to see it. Let me read it to you. It says, Billboard, January 2023. Gale Force will blow you away. Hold on tight and enjoy the experience. And this is followed by a number of your awards, accomplishments, and accolades that you have received over the years.
I love it, and it's very, very sweet. Thank you.
Finally, we really enjoyed this interview, Johnny. You brought your New York flavor to the Vinyl City Broadcasting Studio. We'll stay in touch with you via social media so you can keep us abreast of any new endeavors or shows you might be engaged in.
And I'll send you my street address on the email that I got. I'll send it to you on that. Okay.
Okay, great. All right.
And I got to recover my voice.
Yes, you do. Drink plenty of fluids and rest your vocal cords.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Say hello to the boys, the Planotones for us, would you please?
I will.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
bye,
right.
Johnny.
Bye, Johnny.
Bye-bye.
We're back in the VCB studio. I just wanted to highlight some awards, accolades, and achievements that have been bestowed on Johnny that we might have missed in the interview. In 1994, his CD titled Gale Force was awarded Best Guitar Record of the Year by the Guitar Shop magazine. Daddy Longlegs is one of the songs on that album. Rico, why don't you play just a snippet of Daddy Longlegs from the album for our VCB audience? Aren't you glad we played that for you? In 2019, the East Coast Hall of Fame recognized Johnny with 2 Lifetime Awards. The Legends Award as a legend musician and for the Best Music Maker, Vocal Group Doo-Wop for his work with the Planotones. He was writer and producer for such clients as Lipton, Pepsi, Campbell's, and Nestle. Over the years, he has performed and recorded with the best, like Ringo Star, Dion, Ronnie Spector, Darlene Love, Phoebe Snow, Aaron Carter, M2M, Jules Shear, Joan Osborne, Elvis Costello, Cyndi Lauper, Mick Jagger, Keb'Mo, the Dells, the Spaniels, and literally hundreds of other legendary doo-wop groups. As you can see from the interview, Johnny has cemented himself in the entertainment and music industry. Whether on stage or in the studio, Johnny Gale is an unstoppable music force that always leaves a uniquely indelible imprint on the music and the listener. Anyone in the entertainment or music industry that sees this interview and would like to hire out this talented artist, we have posted his contact information on our last slide, including his website and Facebook page. We hope all our subscribers and friends out there enjoyed this interview as much as we did. Bookmark our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our future interviews and shows. Rico, let's catch the subway out to Queens and check out Johnny's old stomping grounds and ours also. I'm sort of craving a few White Castle burgers.
Baby, move on down the